Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we have the second video taking a look at the Melee Tournament brackets. This video is the Asia bracket. If you did not see the video that went up yesterday of the North America bracket, I'll link it in the description as well as in the cards. I took a look over at the Solomon.io and did it that way. This one's going to be more of the traditional classic, gameplay with the bracket put up on the screen. I'm not going to walk you through it in the same way I did the last time around. But I'm curious to know what your opinions are, your feelings are on this format versus that format. If you prefer that style of video, I'm open to do the more of that kind of stuff. If you like this better of me just talking and showing you the picture and doing it that way, then that's fine as well. Whatever everyone else enjoys is what I will happily do. But I want to jump into this APAC bracket because this APAC bracket's very interesting. It's very, very close. I think a lot of people would look at, Shanghai as this kind of, top team that really no one has actually knocked off that pedestal. Yes, they've lost to the Chengdu Hunters in the Seoul Dynasty, but they only have 2 losses. New York has 3, but even still, they haven't looked as good as Shanghai, and they lost to Shanghai. So there's obviously this big, obvious favorite in the region with Shanghai, but they're not the number 1 seed in the tournament. The Guangzhou Charge are. How is that going to impact things? Etc., etc. So I figure the best thing to do is just pull my bracket up so you all can see it. Yeah, so here it is. You can see my bracket. Now, a lot of this bracket comes down to a lot of things having to happen a certain way that I'm under the impression will or won't happen, depending on the situation. Before I get into the more complicated and difficult part of the bracket, which is the actual top part of the bracket, let's talk about the bottom of this bracket, where I think it's pretty straightforward and pretty clear-cut. The Shanghai Dragons take on the London Spitfire. I would argue the London Spitfire are right now the worst team in the region. They have not looked very good. They are, they did beat Chengdu, which is a good win, but they lost to everyone else they played, Guangzhou, Hangzhou, and Shanghai. So you can maybe argue then that Chengdu is the worst team, though they were able to get a win over Seoul. So who knows? It's very difficult to say for sure, but London has not really impressed me as much as I thought they would. I thought they would be a lot better than what they ended up being. They're going up against the clear-cut best team in the region, in the Shanghai Dragons. They played very recently. It was not a close match. I don't see the Shanghai Dragons losing to the Spitfire. NYXL versus the Chengdu Hunters. More of a close match, not because I think the Chengdu Hunters are significantly better than the Spitfire, or I think the NYXL are significantly worse than the Dragons. I guess I do think the Hunters are somewhat better than the Spitfire. I just think the Hunters have a style of play that is very good against what NYXL like to play. NYXL typically are very kind of organized, very methodical. They play with a very specific formula. They're not a scrappy team. They plan. They know exactly what they're going to do. They know that, at this, when you have this ult, you do this, I do this in response, and they're a very cyclical team who knows what they're doing. Chengdu just does whatever they want. Chengdu what Chengdu. So that's a matchup I think works very well for Chengdu. They're very chaotic. They thrive in chaos. New York doesn't. So if fights do become more chaotic, I think that helps Chengdu out. I still think New York is the better team, and I still think they should be able to take this win. But overall, I think that match could be pretty close, but their matches so far this season haven't been too close. There was that 3-1 that New York had, where they tied on Paris and lost to them on the control map, but their loss on Paris was less on Chengdu playing super well and more on New York playing weirdly, though Chengdu did play well. I will give them credit. So that has me having the Dragons and the Excelsior in the semifinals. I think the Dragons win that matchup. I think it should be a close one again, but it could also be very one-sided for the Dragons. Realistically, I think either of these teams could win. I don't know why that sounded so weird in my head, or when it was being delivered. Anyway, I think both of these teams are good enough for either of them to win. Obviously, Shanghai is arguably the best team in the Overwatch League, period. And the NYXL are not as dominant as I think people expected them to be, myself included. But they've still looked good. They've still looked pretty good. And I think when they have more of a... It's weird to say this, right? I feel like New York is a team that always play for the playoffs. They always put much less stake on like a regular season match and more on like a tournament or playoff match. But they've also never really performed well in the playoffs. So, well, with the exception of the 2019 season playoffs. So it's also the kind of thing of like, well, how well will they actually perform when they don't typically perform well in the playoffs? But I expect IMT to put a lot of work in for this team. I think that's really where he excelled with them last season in the playoffs. So New York, I definitely could expect them to make it to the finals. I think if they do make it to the finals, they should be the favorite because they beat Shanghai. Like that should make you the favorite. But it's a question of whether or not they actually can do that. And I don't think it will happen. I think the Shanghai Dragons will win. I think they are the better team, and I think that they should find the win somewhat convincingly, but not super dominantly, I would say. So that's the bottom part of the bracket. Let's go to the top, where things get a little more interesting. The top part of the bracket, to me, is wide open, right? The bottom half, it's going to be Shanghai versus New York, almost guaranteed in the semifinals, with Shanghai almost guaranteeing themselves a spot in the final, right? Like, that's how good Shanghai is. The top half of the bracket is very interesting because we've seen a lot of flip-flopping with these teams, and we've seen some changes with these teams, and how those changes impact these teams is a huge question mark. The big one, of course, is the Hangzhou Spark acquiring Architect last week. Well, the announcement came last week. I think he's been with the team for a little longer than that. Now, I'm under the impression Architect will be playing for this team. I'd imagine that they had made the announcement when they did because he will be playing in the tournament. If he wasn't going to be playing in the tournament, it would make more sense for you to wait until after the tournament to announce that he joined the team. But they announced it before the tournament, so I'd imagine he's playing. I think Architect Godsby are a very good duo. Obviously, they haven't had a lot of time with this Hangzhou Spark roster together, but, Godsby, Architect, Rhea all played with each other before the Overwatch League, so they do have that going for them. Seoul Dynasty added Slime, which is a move that another player I should say I expect to be playing this week. How much he changes the team, I don't know. I don't think he changes it. I don't think his impact on Seoul Dynasty is as much as Architect's impact on the Hangzhou Spark. Even before the Architect news, I was going to pick the Hangzhou Spark. I feel very confident in what they've done, and they beat Seoul recently. Yes, there's no hero pool, so Seoul definitely could win this match, and I wouldn't be surprised. I think the Seoul Dynasty being unpicked by the Shanghai Dragons and the NYXL as the 7 seed shows you that they're actually a very good team, right? They're better than what their record suggests, right? They're the only one of the only teams to beat Shanghai. Yes, they've struggled, but they have the talent to be a very good team. They need to find metas that work for them. When they can do a no hero pools meta and they can run whatever heroes they want, you would expect that they would have maybe some more success. The Hangzhou Spark have been doing that too. They haven't really been running meta much either, and they've been having some success as well. So these are two teams in a very interesting position who aren't really running the normal style that a lot of other teams are running. I like the Spark. I like them a lot. I'm one of their biggest bullish people who refuses to admit that they maybe are not as good as I originally thought, because I do think the Hangzhou Spark are a very good team and really should be looked at as one of the best teams in the league, potentially, especially in this APAC region. I think by the end of the season, they might be a better team than the Guangzhou Charge. I think they have that much talent on the roster, especially now with the addition of Architect. Whoever wins the Spark Dynasty game, though, has to then play the Charge. In my opinion, it'll be the Spark. The Charge are an interesting team, and they've had some very interesting stuff happen recently. Nero, of course, did not play this past weekend. He's been having some mental, I don't want to say mental health issues, but he's been having he's been taking a break from the game a bit because he has to kind of reassess his love for the game. He's not retiring. He just doesn't have a strong kind of a drive for the game in the way that he did last year or earlier this season. And a lot of that comes down to the travel and whatnot not happening and being stuck in another country with a bunch of people who don't speak your language, who, yes, you're friends with them, but it is still something that is odd and is very different when you don't have someone who you can kind of confide in, who doesn't really necessarily understand what you're going through, and you're so far away from people that you know that it can be difficult and it can be very challenging. So I think that when you are in that position, it makes sense. Now, a tournament is something that I would expect Nero to participate in. I think that is a logical thing to do. The Charge have been an interesting team. I think the Spark have looked good against them so far. I think Godsby Architect is an incredible DPS duo that will definitely challenge the Charge if they're running Happy Eileen, Happy Nero, Eileen Nero. I don't know why I couldn't think of Nero's name again there. I think that the duo of Godsby Architect is very, very good and is better than Nero with whoever he's paired with, most likely, or Happy Eileen, because I just think that Godsby and Architect are two players who they're able to do what they do without taking a ton of resources. They kind of perform well when the rest of their team is not assisting them as much. Nero can do that as well on some heroes, but one of his most notable heroes is the Pharah. Well, if you're playing the Pharah, you have a Mercy. So if you have a Mercy, that means that there's a healer who's putting their resources into you and not into the rest of your team. Spark been running a lot of Ryan Zarya stuff recently, among a bunch of other things that they've been doing. So I think this is an interesting matchup here. I like the Spark because I feel more confident in what I've seen from them and what I know that they're getting with Architect than the Charge. There's a bit more question marks surrounding, of course, whether or not we even see Nero play, but also they didn't look great against Chengdu when they played them this past week. And if Nero's not playing and it's just Happy Eileen, I really don't feel confident in this team's strength. And the Spark have looked pretty good. I think the Spark have improved. They've found what works for them. They don't like to just run the meta. They like to run what they think works best for them, which is what I love to see out of the Spark. Something that I think I mentioned this in a video earlier this week, but I think it's better for a team like the Spark who knows that they're not performing at their best when they're playing the meta because it doesn't really fit their strengths, to say, well, we can run this instead and we can get it to work. I thought they looked pretty good against New York. They looked very good against London. I think they're looking better now than they have for a good portion of the season so far. And I think with the addition of Architect, they are able to now run more meta stuff and able to run more traditional classical compositions that have been played this season. And I think that's going to help them out. So I do think the Spark get the win. But it could be the Charge, it could be the Dynasty. I mean, any of those three teams realistically can make the finals. It really comes down to what the meta is. I have no idea what the meta is. I couldn't predict the meta right now. I genuinely have no idea. I'm going out on a limb, assuming that we're going to keep seeing the Spark run this Ryan Zarya, because it works well for them. And I think we'll probably see some Echo, maybe Echo Tracer, possibly some McCree in there, maybe a little bit of May. I really don't know. I have no idea. Double Shield is very possible. So all that obviously could impact who I think actually wins the whole thing and what teams go where. But I've liked what the Spark have done, so I'm going to pick the Spark for this one. But to me, it doesn't really matter, because to me, the Dragons are going to win this whole thing, right? The Dragons have been that good. They've been so incredibly dominant in most of APAC. And it's what I think is the big thing to look at is, can any team actually beat the Dragons and knock them off that top spot? New York is probably the team with the best chance of doing it if they can do that in the semifinals. If not them, we've seen the Dynasty do it. Can they do it again? They struggled with them the first time they played. The Spark and the Charge haven't been able to do it yet this season. Could the Spitfire have a miraculous upset round one? We don't really know yet. It's going to be interesting to see, but I am of the mindset that the Dragons will win the whole thing. I think they are the best team in the region, And I think this tournament is where they will officially show that they are the best in a good, I guess, good structure. Because I think this is a really good chance for them to showcase how good they really are. So that's it for my bracket. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments down below. This one is very hard. This bracket is much more difficult than North America. You know, with North America, the question really is, you know, who do the teams pick? And who do the Fusion and the Shock have to beat to meet in the finals, right? Like, that's really what that one is there. Here, it's like, with Spark Dynasty in charge, which one of those teams is the best of the three, and which one of them is going to be able to make it to play the Dragons, who we all assume are going to make it to the end. But just that 3-team race up at the top is really close. And part of why I think the Shanghai Dragons might have a pretty easy time in the finals is because I think you're going to see a brawl between the Spark and the Dynasty, and a brawl between the Spark and the Charge. And the Dragons might just coast and cruise through the bottom part of the bracket, and it's going to be easy for them. But who knows? If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. Like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the format. If you like this better than the one that I did yesterday, or if you like the one that I did yesterday better than this, let me know. I'd like to hear your opinions so I can tune videos accordingly in the future. But that's everything I have for you. If you're all staying safe and staying healthy and following whatever guidelines your local area has in place to keep you all safe, I'm going to keep hammering this point home until we've all gotten through this pandemic together. So thank you once again. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.